Blog Talk Radio.
Yes.
Greetings, Dr. Muhammad.
Yes, sir. Greetings.
Greetings. So good to hear from you. We are already rolling live. I'm going to just introduce you to our audience and set the program up, and then we'll get ready to roll if that's acceptable, sir.
Yes, sir. It is.
Outstanding. Thank you, everybody who is listening to the broadcast. This is the context of white supremacy. Gus T Renegade hosting the program. This is being simulcasted. This broadcast is going out on the Blog Talk Radio Network, Context of White Supremacy. It is also going out on the War on the Horizon Radio Network. All the good folks, Irritated Genie and his entire staff, thank you so much for the support. Wonders never cease. Get a MacBook Pro and can simulcast a program. Fantastic. I hope everybody tuning into the broadcast at War on the Horizon, I hope we will do something that is worthy of your time and energy. I know you all are accustomed to getting outstanding programming with Irritated Genie and everyone that supports his efforts. This program, we want to hop right to it. This was a suggestion from an investor and longtime listener, Mr. Dante X. Thank you so much for supporting the program. In addition to investing in the program, he actually got me a copy of the book that we're going to talk about for today's program. So I'm super thankful, and I hope the program is worthy of your generosity. Our guest for today's program, he has taught at the University of Michigan. He has also taught at the University of Toledo. He is holding a doctorate. His research interests, he studies Islam, comparative religions. He's authored many textbooks. A couple of the textbooks, other textbooks other than the one that we're going to discuss today. He is the author of The Truth of God. He also authored Black Arabia and the African Origin of Islam. The text that we're going to look at today, his most recent text, God's Black Prophets, Deconstructing the Myth of the White Muhammad of Arabia and Jesus of Jerusalem. Real pleasure to have him on the program. If you would like to get more information about what he has written, articles, books, what have you, his website, it's linked in the description for this program. You can just click his name and it will take you right to the website. Real pleasure to have him on the program, our guest, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Greetings, Dr. Muhammad, and thank you for sharing a bit of your time with us, sir.
Greetings to you and to your audience. Thank you for the opportunity, Brother Gus. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate you, sir. We appreciate you. If you could speak up just a hair, that would be great so we can hear you clearly.
Well, I'll tell you what I would do. I will take it off Bluetooth. How was that?
Say something else really quick.
Is this better?
Okay. Yes, outstanding. We can hear you clearly. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you and for this opportunity. Greetings to you and greetings to your listening audience.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. For folks who are listening to the broadcast and maybe they have not heard you before, maybe they haven't picked up some of your work, could you maybe give a little background information so we can be a little more informed about the work that you do?
Well, yes, sir. My degrees are in religious studies. I am an trained historian of religion. A BA from Morehouse was in religious studies, and my master's as well as doctorate from the University of Michigan are both in Islamic studies. I have been researching religion from the perspective of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Are you guys still there?
Oh, yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I lost. I've been studying religion from the perspective of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad for 20 years now. I taught classes at University of Michigan. I've taught on these various subjects at numerous universities within the continental U.S. and outside of the U.S. So that is my story, Brother Gus, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow, okay. I guess and let me make sure I double check to make sure that I have the correct website because I do make errors. The website, drwesleymuhammad.com. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. DRESLEY.
Outstanding. Okay. For the people, if you are listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can just click his name, and that will take you to the website, and you can get more information about all the work that he's done. If you're listening at War on the Horizon, the website, again, is Dr. Wesley, and that's WESLEY, Muhammad, MUHAMMAD.com. That'll take you right to the website. But for folks who haven't seen you, you are a black male. Is that correct?
I am, yes, sir.
Okay. I have this program, the C.O.W.S, Context of White Supremacy. I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy. I use those two terms interchangeably, and I use the same definition for both terms. The definition that I use is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
I think that, yes, to the first question, definitely the world has suffered and continues to suffer under white hegemony or white supremacy. We've done so for the last 4,000 years. The only thing I will alter about your definition of it, Gus, white supremacy is not an evil only when it is abusive. I don't want, the reason I will disentangle white supremacy from racism is a manifestation of white supremacy. But even if white folks today decided to be polite, the simple fact that a population that is outnumbered 11 to 1 on the planet continues to have rulership, even if that rulership can miraculously become benign, white supremacy would still be a problem. White supremacy would still be an evil, even minus the abuses. So that is the only qualification I will offer to your definition. White supremacy isn't a problem simply because it's abusive, because white folks abuse black folks. White supremacy is a problem in and of itself. Even if it was theoretically possible for it to be a benign white supremacy, that would still be a problem.
I agree 1,000%. And just for the record, I don't believe white people are going to be benign and pleasant about all this anytime soon. I don't believe that's in their DNA. But, yeah, I agree totally. It is a problem, period, whether they're being nice about this or not. Now, okay. So the book, again, God's Black Prophets, Deconstructing the Myth of the White Muhammad of Arabia and Jesus of Jerusalem. I guess for folks who haven't read this book, can you kind of set the audience up a little bit with exactly what you cover in this particular publication?
Yes, sir. arguably the two most important figures of history, Jesus and Muhammad, and the most important figures in the black community as well, the black community here in America and the black communities across the globe. Jesus and Muhammad are central to our own sense of self. Most black folks' sense of self is anchored in some attachment to Jesus and or Muhammad. The fact that the triumph of white supremacy in religion was signaled by the success of the image of the white Jesus and the white Muhammad on the global scene, the success with which these two images were sold to the world signaled the triumph of white supremacy in religion. The white Jesus and the white Muhammad, the white, more clear, the white-skinned Jesus and the white-skinned Muhammad are ahistorical. That is to say, they are not historical figures. They are artificial creations by individuals who had particular feelings about blackness at a particular time, which inspired them to transfigure the prophet of their religion or the savior of their religion, in this case, Jesus and Muhammad. Their particular feelings against blackness inspired them to transfigure Jesus from according to the one piece of historical evidence we have, and now the scientific evidence, Jesus was a short, nappy-headed black man, dark-skinned man. This image offended the 2nd, 3rd, 4th century church, and thus his image was changed to a tall, ruby red, long, blonde-haired figure. The same thing with Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad was a black Arab, as the original Arabs were black. And that was fine so long as Islam was in the hands of black Arabs, which it was up until 750. But with the ending of the rule of black Arabs in Islam, their replacement by non-Arab whites, the image of that black Arab Muhammad also changed, giving us the Muhammad that the world finds so endearing today, this white-skinned, ruby red Muhammad with black curly hair. Both of these are fictions, pious fictions, but fictions nonetheless. And both of these are images that replaced an image of a historical image of a black Jesus and a historical image of a black Muhammad. My book documents, one, the reality of the black Jesus of history and black Muhammad of history, and I document how they were both transformed into these tall, ruby white fellas that we take to be historical representations of them today.
Okay. What would your response be? Because I've heard, this discussion often, and I've heard quite a few black people say, this is not important. Religion is about a spiritual connection to the Creator. It's not about, trying to argue that Jesus is black or Muhammad is a black person or Jesus is white. All that is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if he was white or black. What would your response to that be?
Right. Most of those who will say that will go home to a picture of a white Jesus on their wall. If it doesn't matter, then why have a picture of the man on your wall? See, for most who say that, they don't believe that. If Jesus was either through incarnation, through immaculate conception, however he got into human form, if he had a human form, if he was embodied on earth, there is no way to avoid the discussion of what that body looked like. If he had a body, that body was either black, brown, red, yellow, or white. Muhammad was an historical figure. He was a man. It was important enough to make these individuals white. No one criticized, no one walks past an image of, well, at least not those who criticize us participating in this discussion over the appearance of Jesus or Muhammad. They don't walk past these images of a white Jesus and criticize the owner of it. They don't say, why do you have this white Jesus on the wall? It doesn't matter what color he is. As long as Jesus is white, it can matter. But when the evidence comes out that he is not white, that he was black, now all of a sudden it doesn't matter. It has always mattered. Now, especially in the case with Muhammad, no Muslim familiar with the classical tradition of Islam can say the appearance of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, doesn't matter. It mattered to Islam in the pre-modern world. There were whole books written, Semitic texts, glorifying his physical characteristics. There was a whole tradition developed of passages of his physical description used to ward off evil and keep evil from the house. In the classical Islamic world, the physical appearance of the prophet was very important. Why does it not matter today? Well, it does matter today. It matters more today than it did then, because the Prophet Muhammad that the world of Islam reveres today is not the Prophet Muhammad of history. They are not following the sunnah of the Prophet of history. They are following the sunnah of the Prophet that has been transfigured, not just into a white man, but into a white, racist, sexist man. And that white Muhammad, just as that white Jesus, is the signal of the triumph of white supremacy in Christianity, the white Muhammad is the signature of the triumph of white supremacy in Islam.
Wow.
And that matters.
Wow. How do black people, when they read your book or when you go out and you give lectures, how do black people respond to this information?
Ironically, it's a mixed bag. Yes, it's a very mixed bag. Because black people, we are not monolithic, so black folks come to my lectures from various different perspectives. You have Muslims that react one way. You have so-called Afrocentrists who react one way. Ironically, those who are most offended by my work are those who I would have thought would have more really embraced my work, that being the Afrocentrist community. I would have expected our Afrocentrist brothers, especially those who claim intellectual descent from our great scholar, Dr. C.O.W.S, I would have expected his intellectual children today to have embraced my work. But they are fighting vigorously against this work for one reason or another. But, yes, the response, excuse me, beloved, the response is mixed as far as black folks go. Some love it, some hate it.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. I just want to be clear. You, in your book, this is not new. Historians have, pointed this out before, that these figures, Muhammad, Jesus, these are not white people. You begin pretty early in your book going to the work of Robert Eisler. Am I pronouncing his name correctly? Robert Eisler?
Robert Eisler.
Robert Eisler. Thanks, sir. Robert Eisler. And you reference his work, and this is a white person, correct?
Absolutely, a Jewish scholar.
Okay. And I want to read a little bit from what you quoted, Mr. Eisler. He writes that he's talking about Jesus. He's saying that both his nature and his form were human, for he was a man of simple appearance, mature age, black-skinned, short growth, 3 cubits tall, hunchbacked, pugnacious, a long nose, eyebrows meeting above the nose, that the spectators could take fright, with scanty, curly hair, but having a line in the middle of the head after the fashion of the Nazarenes, with an underdeveloped beard. And again, this is a white man. You said Jewish scholar.
Right. Let me qualify. Those aren't Eisler's words. Those are the words of Josephus, the first century, another Jewish white man. But the distinction is critical here. Robert Eisler was able to reconstruct the corrupted testimony of Josephus. Josephus was a first century Jew who is critically important for the church. All of his works we have today only because they passed through the hands of Christian scribes. Now, Josephus was a witness to the early Jesus movement, and he gave one of the very few, actually, the only authentic testimony, contemporary testimony of the Jesus movement and the appearance of Jesus himself. So those words you quoted from Eisler was actually quoting from first century Josephus. Described that rebel from Jerusalem as black skin, curly hair, short with practically a nappy beard, with a part down the middle of his curly hair. And understand, if Mel Gibson would have employed Josephus's reconstructed testimony, and he put the passion together, that movie would have been a profoundly different experience for everyone who watched it. To see a short, black-skinned man treated in the manner he was treated and then hung on the cross like that. You hear of white women in the audiences of the Passion standing up and then fainting at the because of the trauma inflicted on the white actor of Jesus in the Passion. What would the response have been if those cruelties were inflicted on a actor playing a short, black, nappy-headed Jesus? It probably would have taken less, just another lynching.
Wow.
Double whammy.
Wow. How did white scholars, when Eisler's work was published in the 1930s, how did white scholars respond to his work in asserting that Jesus was a black man?
Well, obviously, in most of Eisler's work, there's controversy. Now, Eisler's credentials have always been impeccable. Revolutionary knowledge, it's unavoidable. It will cause controversy. There were those who tried to criticize Eisler's reconstruction immediately, most of those were defending the status quo of Josephus scholarship at the time. The groundbreaking nature of Eichmann's work, you have to understand this, was not because of that little passage on Jesus. No, that wasn't what upset those in the academy so much. It was what he did overall to the study of Josephus. He revolutionized the study of Josephus, and he was upsetting the status quo of Josephine's studies. So that is why there was pushback. Now, no, they did not write. They were, as we would expect, because this is usually how it's done, they were for the most part quiet on the passage of the blackness of Jesus, other than to try to criticize his use of the Semitic manuscripts. Eichmann's work, reconstruction, was based on one manuscript tradition of Josephus, the Slavonic manuscript tradition. His decision to use that tradition, to prioritize that tradition, has since been vindicated. The early criticisms were over his use of that particular manuscript tradition, because the status quo did not invest the type of time in that tradition that he did. But he has since been vindicated on that.
Wow. Again, our guest for today's program, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, in the book that we are discussing, God's Black Prophets, Deconstructing the Myth of the White Muhammad of Arabia and Jesus of Jerusalem. You begin chapter 2, the Aryanization of Islam. Can you explain what you mean when you say Aryanization?
Yes, sir. Now, when we hear Aryan, we think of Adolf Hitler and his theory of white Aryan supremacy. And that is, in some sense, appropriate, but that is not the primary meaning of the term, as I use it, Aryanization. It really derives, in general, it means a whitenization of Islam, but a little more than that. Whitenization, the whitening of Islam through the agency of Persia or Iran. Ancient Persia was named Iran in honor of Hitler's Aryan theory, because the Persians or Iranians are not a Semitic people. They're not Arabs. The Muslims are not Arabs. They're an Indo-Aryan people, a very proud Indo-Aryan people. And it is this Indo-Aryan people, Persians or as we call them now, Iranians, that really accelerated the process of whitening Islam. It was they who were primarily responsible for the overthrow of the Black dynasty. Islam was ruled by a Black dynasty since the time of Prophet Muhammad till Black Arabs, till the ending of the Umayyad dynasty, which was a Black Arab dynasty. This dynasty was overthrown in 750 by angry, resentful white Persians. The revolution that toppled the Umayyads has been called the Abbasid Revolution, but that's a misnomer. It's really the Persian Revolution, because it was these angry whites, these angry Aryans, angry at the Black Arabs, whom they detested. And they detested more because they were ruling over them now. They detested this fact, and ultimately their anger exploded in a revolution that toppled these Black Arabs. And Black Islam, if you will, or the Black dynasty of Islam, the Black face of Islam, will never be seen again. These, once they were toppled and the Persians or Iranians this revolution affected not just the political dynasty, it changed the very spirit of Islam. When Persians became dominant in the culture, in the religion, it changed the very spirit of the religion. Islam went from not just black, but pro-black, went to a white face, very anti-black. Islam became racist under the tutelage or at the hands of these Persian converts to the religion. And then Islam was further whitened by the rise of the Turkish dynasties, the Seljuks and the Mamluks, and then the Mongols. Islam has not been black. The face of Islam has not been black since the fall of the Umayyad dynasty in 750. From that point on, the face of Islam has primarily been white. This is what I mean by the Aryanization of Islam, the whitenizing of Islam. And this is when the racism, at least the anti-black racism, creeps into Islam. And this is when white supremacy takes its feet firmly in the Muslim world. And this is when Prophet Muhammad was transformed from a black Arab into a white Persian, because the white images of Muhammad that are popular in certain parts of the world, like Iran, depict not an Arab Muhammad, but a very Persian Muhammad.
Wow. In reading this chapter, one of the things that jumped out at me immediately, it seems like an integral aspect of this Aryanization of Islam is sexual intercourse between black people and non-black people. On page 24, you have a quote here on page 24, and it says that in one important way, Omar was unable to prevent the Muslims from mingling with the subject peoples. Since they were forbidden to own land, they used their wealth from booty chiefly to buy women. All the children born of these unions, and there were many thousands of them, called themselves Arabs in order to identify with the ruling class. When they grew up and married, their offspring in turn called themselves Arabs. Thus, it came about that the people of the Muslim world, many of them without a drop of Arab blood in their veins, became known as Arabs. Can you kind of elaborate on this intermingling process?
Absolutely. That is very critical. There is a tradition, a saying attributed to Prophet Muhammad that goes thusly: the era of the Arabs will end when the sons of the daughters of Persia grow to manhood. That is to say, the black Arabs' day will be done when the sons they produce from Persian concubines grow to manhood. Now, that is exactly what happened. This particular saying speaks to the second dynasty, the Abbasid dynasty. The rulers of the Abbasid dynasty was the second dynasty to rule Islam. It followed the Umayyad dynasty. The Umayyad dynasty was a pure black Arab dynasty. The caliphs, the leaders of that dynasty, were, with one exception, I believe, were all pure black Arabs. Arab father, Arab mother. The dynasty that replaced it, just the opposite. The caliphs were the children of Arab fathers through concubine women, many of whom Persian. And there's an Arabic term for hajim, mixed breed. And it's these so-called mixed breeds that turned around and started abusing the black Arabs in the kingdom. This race mixing. And eventually, because these, mixed breeds, if you will, spoke Arabic and dressed Arabic, they took on the identity of Arabs, even though during the period of the Umayyads, mixed breeds weren't considered Arabs. You had to have an Arab father and an Arab mother to be an Arab, and this is why. Because purity of Arab genealogy was signaled by blackness of skin. The blacker the skin, the greater your credibility in claiming a pure Arab genealogy. So sons of concubine women, especially concubine women from the Byzantine or Persian, or Turkish, the white concubine women, their sons were denied the status of Arab during the kingdom of the Black Umayyads. That changed when they were overthrown. And so these non-Arabs, speaking Arabic, dressing Arabic, and now in key administrative positions in the empire, took to assuming the identity of Arabs. And then when the Turks gained authority in Islam, the whole image is just assumed now that these white-skinned folks are Arabs. The identity of Arab has now changed because of the race mixing, and the sons of the daughters of Persia had grown to namehood during the Abbasid period. That is to say, the sons of these Persian concubines had grew up and took vengeance on their fathers on behalf of their mother's people. You have caliphs such as, for example, Mahmud, an important caliph during the Abbasid period. His father was Arab. His mother was Persian. He was well known for his distaste, his disdain for the Arabs of his father, and he preferred the Persians of his mother, and he was abusive to the Arabs. So, yes, this miscegenation between the Arabs and the women of the conquered peoples was very instrumental in the Aryanization process of Islam.
Context of white supremacy.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Another key facet of this Aryanization process, language, and language in general seems very important throughout this text, but on page 25, I wanted you to kind of share a little bit before we talk about how this was subverted, but on page 25, you write that pre-Islamic, rather pre-Quranic poetry belonged to the Arab tribal heritage and was perceived as the medium by which the tribal legacy was perpetuated. The guardians of this heritage, the poets and the transmitters of the poems, were thereafter Arab Bedouin. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Say it again.
Arab Bedouin. I just want to make sure I pronounce that.
Bedouin.
Can you, I guess, first talk about the importance of poetry and how that transmitted heritage and culture? Can you talk about that first?
Yes, sir, and how it's relevant to the Aryanization process of Islam. Absolutely. Arab poetry is not poetry as we understand it. Spoken word night at your local club or spot. It was fundamentally different. Arab poetry in the pre-Islamic period was a religious and a social and a cultural phenomenon. The history, the pride of the tribe, the Arab tribe, was displayed, articulated through its poetry. And it had profound religious significance because the poets weren't just skilled wordsmiths. The poets were understood to get their poetry from a supernatural source. So poetry was critical to the social, cultural, political, and religious life of the Arab tribe prior to Muhammad's reform movement. In terms of this particular discussion, the history, the great exploits, frequently the military exploits of the tribe are transmitted from one generation to the other through poetry. So the history of that tribe was caught up, was anchored in the poetry. Arabism, poetry was a critical part of being Arab because the history of the Arabs was transmitted on a tribal basis through poetry. Now, why that is relevant to this discussion is because that process was hijacked. The transmitters of the poetry were Arabs, and then they were not. The occupation of transmitting poetry fell into the hands of non-Arab converts, largely Persian converts to Islam and converts to Arabism. They made themselves experts on the transmission of Arab poetry, and so they started dominating the transmission of Arab poetry. Why this is important is because it is documented that they did not just transmit the poetry, but they manipulated the poetry. And this is why you have the case, the startling case of Arab poetry that displays so much anti-black racism. But the researchers, for example, Sister Dana Manish and Brother Tariq Berry, both of these from different angles, have absolutely documented and demonstrated that the Arabs of the pre-Islamic period and post-Islamic period were black. And Sister Dana Manish has demonstrated the freedom from anti-black racism that was the order of the day in pre-Islamic and early Islamic times. So if the evidence indicates that there was no anti-black racism in pre-Islamic Arabia and early Islam, and that these pre-Islamic Arabs and early Islamic Arabs were black, how is it that we find so much anti-black racism in Arab poetry? Because Arab poetry stopped being Arab poetry a long time ago. It was transmitted and manipulated by anti-black, by Persians who hailed from the Sasanian kingdom, which was the Zoroastrian kingdom. And if you know anything about Zoroastrianism, especially during the Sasanian period, that religion is characterized by a cosmic dualism that pitted light against darkness. All things good were white and all things evil were black. And these Persian converts to Islam brought that dualism into Islam. And with it they brought a very vehement anti-black racism that they made its way into the Arab poetry that they transmitted.
Wow. Context of white supremacy. I hope it's been very clear that what you write in your book and the evidence shows the original Arabs, not what we think of as Arab now, but original Arabs, these are black people, correct?
Absolutely. That is completely irrefutable. I will reference your listening audience to the great researchers of Brother Tariq Berry. He wrote a book, The Unknown Arabs. Brother Tariq, with this book,
did what I call literary archaeology. He excavated information from the classical Arabic literary tradition, documenting not just that the Arabs were black, but they were self-consciously black. Dana Manish has done phenomenal work, ethnological work, anthropological, historical work, documenting that the tribes of Arabia are black tribes, the tribes he has identified, done meticulous work in identifying the black Arab tribes of today and the black Arab tribes of the early Islamic and pre-Islamic period. Brother Chancellor Williams wrote his book having the benefit of Dana Manish's and Tariq Berry's researches. He would have had to have written a different book, that is to say, The Destruction of Black Civilization. He would have had to have written that book differently if he had the benefit of the research of Tariq Berry and Dana Manish. It is irrefutable that true Arabs are a black people and African people. They are part of the Semitic group. Semites are an African people.
I think a big part of that, people do not think of the area of the world now known as Arabia, Saudi Arabia. They do not think of that as being Africa. Can you talk about that? Because you talk about that in the book.
Absolutely. Saudi Arabia is a political entity. There was no Saudi Arabia in antiquity. Arabia is more, is more rightly called Afrabia. The geomorphic, ecological, and climatological evidence all indicates that the Arabian Peninsula is a northeastern extension of the continent of Africa. It is not a part of Asia, not geomorphically, not climatologically, not ecologically. It is a part of Africa, northeast Africa. The political boundaries of the European map makers, that's say the colonialists, that's to say the white supremacists, they can no longer define the boundaries of black lands. Not only is the landmass African, but the populations of that peninsula have always been an African people. All of what archaeological evidence we do have indicates clearly that Arabians and Arabs were an African people in antiquity.
Wow. You mentioned the word, and I think there's been a lot of confusion around the word. Can you, to our audience, explain what the word Semitic means?
Yes, sir. Primarily, Semitic denotes a fact rather than an ethnicity.
Can you say that one more time? The connection broke up a little bit.
Primarily, Semitic refers to a system of languages, spoken languages, either living or dead. Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, Ethiopic, Ugaritic, Syriac. These are Semitic languages. Now, Semitic can also refer to the native speakers of these languages. Greek, Latin, German, these are Indo-European languages. Arabic, Hebrew, these are Semitic languages. Persian is an Indo-European language, not a Semitic language. So Semitic refers to this system, this family of languages, and their native speakers. Now, this family of languages, Semitic languages, they are part of a larger family of languages called Afroasiatic. That includes the various Semitic languages. It includes the ancient Egyptian language. It includes Ethiopic languages, or Madic languages, I should say, East African languages. And their speakers. Now, the Semitic language derives from the parent Afroasiatic language, if you will. But as the Afroasiatic language, no doubt the original speakers of the original Afroasiatic language, if you will, were an African people in Africa. Many scholars now confirm that the original Semitic speakers were a group of Africans that branched off from that initial group of Africans and northward, northeast into Arabia, into the Levant and into Arabia. So the original Semitic speakers are an African people. The original speakers of Arabic are an African people. The original speakers of Hebrew are an African people.
Interesting. So when someone uses the term Semitic, the definition is referencing a collection of languages. It's not necessarily referencing a race of people. Is that accurate?
Well, it depends on who's making the reference. A lot of people, it depends on who's making the reference.
Okay.
It could, but you would have to ask the person using Semitic to define what they are meaning by Semitic.
Dig that. And I guess in the same vein then, so what is your understanding of the term Semite?
Those African originators of the family of Semitic languages. That's the Semite.
Okay.
And that's not just the African originators, but their descendants, that is to say, the Africans who spread the Semitic languages throughout the world. Those are Semites.
Okay. And you said these are black people.
Absolutely. The first documented social group of Arabic speakers, the Cushite group, the Midianites, the ancient Hebrews, were a black people. The oldest documented Semitic language is the Akkadian. And the Akkadians were Semitic speakers that entered Mesopotamia around, well, at least their language is documented around 2200 BC. The oldest literary documented Semitic language. These Akkadians were a black people, a Cushitic people. So the earliest documentation of Semitic speakers are black people.
What, in your opinion, what is the source of the confusion around this term and people not really being sure exactly who's being referenced by the term Semite?
I'm sorry, please repeat that question.
Yes, sir. In your opinion, what is the source of the confusion around the term Semite and people not really being clear in terms of who's being referenced when that term is being used?
Yes, sir, because non-Semites have put on Semitic robes. Japhites, if you will, are going around, to put it bluntly, masquerading as Semites. That's the non-Semites. Once folks learn to speak the various Semitic languages, non-native speakers learn to speak the various Semitic languages. And, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold.
Yes, sir.
And the definition of Semite was broadened to the simple, whoever speaks the Semitic language is a Semite. That's where the confusion comes in. So if you have, in terms of genealogy, in terms of culture, non-speaking the Semitic language and identifying themselves as Semites, if it is the case that one particular non-Semitic, Semitic-speaking group gains dominance, then the assumption would be they are the true Semites. For example, world jewelry. Most of world jewelry are absolutely not Semites. They are Europeans. Their origin is not in the Middle East. Their origin is in Europe. Yet we assume that the typical Semite is a Jew from Israel. That is absolutely not the case.
When did that association take place, to your knowledge, that people began to associate Semites and or Jews with white people?
When did it take place? I can't identify necessarily the earliest period. Now, we first seem to meet, Caucasian or white Semitic speakers in Canaan around 1700 BC. They entered the area from the north and ended up going into what it appears now, going into Kemet, ravaging Kemet under the name of Hyksos. And as we believe Manetho, these white Semitic-speaking ravagers of Kemet were run out of Kemet eventually, and they went back into Canaan and founded Jerusalem. So white Semitic speakers among the tribes of Israel, it appears, from at least around 1700 BC. And from there, now, once white Jews gained dominance in the world, once white Jews gained influence in the media, well, it was easy to sell the world the misinformation that they are the prototypical Semite. They are not. Most Jews of Israel have no genealogical connection with that land, Palestine.
Again, context of white supremacy, we are simulcasting at War on the Horizon and Blog Talk Radio. Our guest for today's program, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. His website, it's linked in the program, the address, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, and that is Dr. Wesley, Wesley, Muhammad, Muhammad, drwesleymuhammad.com. I was really surprised in reading your book. You made a point of emphasizing that as the original Arabs, black people, practicing Islam, they were pro-black. They were very proud about the fact that they were black people, and the darker the black, the better. Can you talk?
They didn't like white folks, and they did not like white folks. We can judge this, judge it how you want to judge it. It's a historical fact. I know Sister Dana, my niece, she describes them as very racist, and in truth, that is appropriate. These black Muslims, black Arab Muslims, were very proud of their blackness, and they did not like white folks. I can quote you some of the things that were said by black Arabs of these white Persians and Byzantines. They didn't like them at all. But yes, they were very pro-black, and it's important because the black Islam under Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the four rightly guided caliphs that followed him, and the Umayyad dynasty. That's Islam from the time of Prophet Muhammad to 750. That was the Islam that spread the Islamic empire from the Pyrenees to the Himalayas. This was the greatest imperial revolution. It was the largest empire the world had seen. And it was an empire of black folks. That was black power at its on its greatest display. So, which raises the point of why Afrocentrists are so resisting this information. This was a black dynasty that was greater in extent than anything Kemet achieved. Hannibal didn't achieve it. And that's fine. All of those are great historical empires, but so was this. The Muslim empire, a great historical black empire. These were self-consciously black Muslims, and that was a black power dynasty, the greatest display of black power the world, I say, has seen since Hannibal's defeat of Rome.
If it's possible, if you don't have it, it's no big deal. But if possible, could we hear some of those quotes that black people from that time, how they felt about white people?
Oh, yes, sir. The first caliph, leader of the community, first, I mentioned the so-called mixed breeds. It's interesting, the black Arabs spoke about mixing with white women in language that later white racists would use to talk about mixing with blacks. They used to say that for an Arab woman to cohabit with a non-Arab is like her cohabiting with a monkey.
Wow.
Yeah, is what they said. The Caliph Muawiyah, the first caliph of the Umayyad dynasty, he was a black Arab, and he got wind. He was sensitive to. He was very politically astute. He was sensitive going on in his kingdom, and he suspected, and his suspicions proved true later, he suspected that the whites in his kingdom were turning against the Arabs and plotting against the Arabs. And so he entertained the thought of killing off half of the whites in his kingdom and enslaving the other half. We can evaluate that, judge it how we will, but it's historical. And these were self-conscious black Arabs, black folks, many of whom just did not like white folks.
These sound like people I can ride with. I'm all right with that. Wow, okay. This changed dramatically, and you point this out in the book repeatedly, the attitude and becoming, as you said, the Aryanization of Islam. And on page 80 of your book, you point out that the blackness being, here we go again, I'll just read a little bit for folks who are listening in. You insulted the family of the Prophet Muhammad because of their blackness, while there are still deep black, pure-blooded Arabs. However, you are white. The Romans have embellished your faces with color. The color of the family of Hashan was not a bodily defect. You talk about how this switches from being aggressively, very proud black, dislike of white people, to disparaging and mocking black people. It goes on later on the same page. You say that this is, I'm not Muslim, so I'm a little ignorant in pronouncing some of the names, but you said on page 80 that this is Muhammad. I don't want to pronounce the name because I'm just going to do it incorrectly, but he mocked these black people, saying that they were tar face and charcoal face. Can you talk about how some of this disparagement of blackness came about?
Yes, sir. Well, what you read initially was from the poetry of a 9th century non-Arab poet, Ibn Rumi. Ibn Rumi was a non-Arab. In fact, his father was believed, his mother was Persian, his father was Greek, it's believed. But he was an advocate of the black Arabs. And what you read was from poetry in which he criticized the Abbasid government for abusing not just the black Arabs, but specifically the black family of Prophet Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And he's making the case that the blackness of the Arabs, the blackness of Muhammad's family, is not a bodily defect. It's a mark of the purity of Arabs. Because the Abbasid government, sons of the daughters of Persia, the Abbasid caliphs were not pure Arabs, the gross majority of them. They were sons of concubines, and they despised the pure Arabs. Many of them despised Arabs and abused the pure Arabs, and in particular abused the pure Arab black family of Prophet Muhammad. So that's Ibn Rumi's poetry of criticizing the Abbasids for so doing. Now, you mentioned the case of Muhammad Anas al-Bakiyya, who was one of those family members of Prophet Muhammad. He was a pure Arab descendant of Prophet Muhammad. This is information. This is an example of the type of literary archaeology that our brother Tariq Berry has done in his book, The Unknown Arabs. Muhammad Anas al-Bakiyya is a very important figure because he is a pure descendant of Prophet Muhammad. And he was so black, he was so dark-skinned. The caliph, who was not a pure Arab, mocked him by calling him tar face and charcoal face. That's how black he was. But this black Arab, this tar face, charcoal face Arab, was a pure descendant of the family of Prophet Muhammad. How do you think Prophet Muhammad looked? If his pure descendant was so black, he was tar face, charcoal face. But the fact that the black family of Prophet Muhammad can be abused in the way that they were under the Abbasids indicates the paradigm shift that has occurred in the Islamic world, where blackness is so despised that even the blackness of the Prophet's family isn't free from its attack, that the black Prophet is abused. What do you think would happen to the image of the Prophet himself if blackness is now despised and the despising of blackness targets the black family of Prophet Muhammad? What do you think will happen to the image of Prophet Muhammad? I tell you what did happen. The image was whitewashed. It was Aryanized. Prophet Muhammad was transfigured from an Arab into a white Persian.
Wow. I want to underscore this to make sure folks listening in really appreciate this, because I think we just said on the previous broadcast in my opinion, an integral aspect of racism, white supremacy. One of the things that racist man and racist woman have to do is totally degrade blackness, total degradation and humiliation of black people. And you wrote, this is the beginning of chapter 5 that I believe I'm going to attempt to pronounce this one. Is it Ahmad Abi Suleiman? Is that it?
What page are you reading?
Page 64, the first quote at the beginning of chapter 5. He says, anyone...
Ahmed Ibn Abi Suleiman. Yes, sir.
Okay. I was halfway in the ballpark on that one. Anyone who says that the prophet was black should be killed. The prophet was not black. I mean, that is, you talk about a 180-degree turn from pro-black, absolutely, proud of blackness, to you should be killed, you are an infidel.
Absolutely. That is the distance. That nicely signifies the extent of the paradigm shift. The world of Islam is now a totally different world, where affirming Muhammad's blackness could get you killed in the Islamic empire. Islam is now officially, irretrievably white supremacist now. With that fatwa, with that declaration, Islam is officially white supremacist. Wow. The spirit of Islam is now changed. Not just its articulation, but the fact that such a declaration could be made speaks to how the spirit of Islam has now changed. Not just the political dynasty, not just the dominating culture, but the very spirit. Because that, or variant of that fatwa, or that declaration, is often repeated in the literature. It's acceptable to either make those who claim he was black worthy of death, or define them as official disbelievers, guilty of disbelief. You find that often in the literature at this point.
If that is
the Aryanization of Islam, white supremacy in Islam.
If that is a part of the spirit of Islam, and in this book you write about the same thing, the Hellenization of Christianity, same thing happening with Jesus, if that is a part of the spirit of the religion, how does that impact a black person who is attempting to practice this religion and is attached to these white images of Jesus and Muhammad?
Oh, very good question. The exact same way that white Jesus impacts black Christians. The other side of the coin of white supremacy, wherever it establishes itself, is black inferiority. And black inferiority is as much a reality in the Muslim world as white supremacy is, because the two always coexist. And so black Muslims, let's say Muslims of African descent, with few exceptions, have bought the lie of Islamic white supremacy and black inferiority. They have an inferiority complex. And this is why this allows white Arabs, and that's an oxymoron you now know. So I'm putting that in quotes, white Arabs to come, or immigrant Muslims in general, to come here to America with such an arrogance and an air of authority. Many immigrant Muslims who travel to America have little knowledge of the classical Arabic tradition. Yet, by virtue of them being white Arabs, they come with the presumption that they are the legitimate teachers of Islam. And most disheartening is the fact that most African-American Muslims in America concede that point because of the inferiority complex that black Muslims operate under. Black Muslim inferiority complex is a reality, and it manifests itself in so many unfortunate ways in the Ummah, in the Muslim community, not just in America, but across the globe.
You are a practicing Muslim, correct?
I am.
Can you offer some suggestions for individuals, if you have black people that are in the listening audience who are attempting to practice Islam, how to counter the Aryanization and white supremacist element that has infected Islam?
Yes, sir. I wrote the book because I firmly believe that the first antidote, a critical antidote, the necessary antidote to white supremacy in Islam is the revelation of the black prophet of Islam. See, it's hard. In order for white supremacy to triumph in Islam, Muhammad had to be made white. There can be no white supremacy in Islam with the black prophet Muhammad. There can be none. So, in my opinion, the antidote to white supremacy in Islam is this information about the real ethnicity of Prophet Muhammad and the early Muslims. That whole drama that played itself out in Mecca, in Medina, in Arabia, the establishment of the Muslims under Muhammad, not only were they black, but the Arabs that they were fighting were black. That whole drama was the drama of black actors, completely different from the drama we get from Mustafa Akkad's movie about Muhammad in 1976, The Message, that had all of these white folks playing black Muslims in Arabia. It's critical that we see Muhammad and the early Muslims as what they were. Black Arabs, descendants of Africans that entered the Arabian Peninsula a long time ago. That is, Islam is our other stolen legacy. Acknowledging that fact and reclaiming that legacy begins the process of busting up the mind of white supremacy and black inferiority that we have in Islam. We black Muslims have in Islam. I do not think that the mind of white supremacy and black inferiority in Islam can be eradicated except through bringing back to common public knowledge the Prophet Muhammad himself was black, a black-skinned Arab, and ultimately a son of Africa.
Context of white supremacy. Our guest again for today's program, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. We got a lot of folks called in. I'm going to get to the phone lines. If y'all give me 15 minutes, I'll go to the phone line. Language, again, importance of language. You write in your book, God's Black Prophets, the term white did not have the same meaning. If you go back in earlier periods, it did not have the same meaning that the term has now. Could you elaborate on that for our listeners?
Absolutely. The Arabic term white, abiyad, is a term used to describe very black-skinned Arabs. When not used of human complexion, it means white. But when you use a human complexion in the classical Arabic period, it meant a number of things. It meant a refined black complexion. That's a black complexion that is free of blemish, and it has a golden brown glow to it. It means luminous. It means some things other than other than white skin. It meant generally a black complexion that has a glow and is free of blemish. Abyad. When the Arabs wanted to designate a white or fair complexion, they used a different term. Ahmar, red. Red skin meant light skin or white skin. They didn't use the term white to define white skin. White, for the classical Arabs, meant a black complexion that was free of blemish and it had a glow to it. So, and this is important because Prophet Muhammad in the literature is described both as asma, as dark brown, and as abyad, which most translate as white, but no, not white skin. Abyad as in black skin, free of blemish, and with a glow. And this is important. The larger point is we must stop applying 21st century Western concepts to 9th, 10th, 11th century Arabic material. Don't apply an American understanding of whiteness to a 9th century Baghdadi Arabic text. That just creates a lot of trouble. And it has created a lot of trouble.
Can you talk about how that relates to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? And I guess even though I'm not Muslim, I'm familiar that he constantly asserted that Muhammad was a black man. And then I guess closer to the end of his life, him saying that Muhammad was white. Could you talk about that toward the end of this book?
Well, if I may, that's theology. And if we can, I would like to keep this more on the historical side.
Okay.
In terms of the historical data. Once even though I have a whole part in my book on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his position on this question of the ethnicity of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad did over 20 years describe Prophet Muhammad as a black prophet. Mm-hmm. And then in 1972, he described Prophet Muhammad as a white man. Mm-hmm. Now, in neither case did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad offer any explanation of what he meant, except he did, in reference to Prophet Muhammad as a black man, he did call him dark. Mm-hmm. So presumably by black he meant dark skin. He never offered an explanation of what he meant by white man, and how this statement, this singular statement in 1972, how we as Muslim followers of his, how we are to understand that in the context of everything he has said before. And so there's real ambiguity there. That's why I say this is theology. There's real ambiguity there because he never offered an explanation. He never offered a way to harmonize the two statements. So the task is up to us as students of his to try to harmonize the two statements. Myself as a student, I choose to harmonize them with the aid of the empirical data, the historical evidence. And what we find in for example, the classical Arabic text is that this seeming contradiction, because on the surface this looks like a blatant contradiction on the part of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. For 20 years he says he's black, and then all of a sudden he says he's white. But we find the exact same seeming contradiction in classical Islamic tradition, because the same man who describes Prophet Muhammad in the classical Arabic tradition as a white man, Anas ibn Malik, a companion of the Prophet, is the exact same man who described the Prophet as having a dark brown body. We know in the context of Arabic, there is no conflict there. Describing the Prophet as a so-called white man, using the term Abyad, does not negate his being a man with a dark brown complexion, a black man. In fact, it further clarifies what kind of black man he is. He's a black man that has a blemish-free complexion and a glow about him. Now, do I know that is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad meant? Absolutely not. Nobody knows what he meant because he did not clarify. What I'm saying is the type of student of that man that I am is one who will try to resolve any apparent conflict by appeal to data rather than dogma.
Before I check the phone lines, if it's acceptable, I just wanted to ask about, because you have quite a few passages talking about white people and whether or not they can accept Islam. One of the passages, this is quoting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that the white race was made by nature a liar and a murderer. The black nation is only fooling themselves to take the Caucasian as otherwise. This is what Jesus learned of their history before he gave up his work of trying to convert the Jews or the white race to the religion of Islam. And the same knowledge of them was given to Muhammad by the Imams of Mecca. Do you think this is accurate? Do you believe that white people are not able to accept Islam?
Well, there are many white people who have accepted Islam. The point Honorable Elijah Muhammad was making was whether whites by nature, Honorable Elijah Muhammad distinguished Islam by Muslims by nature and Muslims by conversion. Honorable Elijah Muhammad himself, though he declared that black people are Muslims by nature and that white people, Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, were created with a nature contrary to Islam. He yet said that white people can and have, some white people have accepted Islam as a religion. He said some white people will assist him, some white Muslims, some white Jews will assist him in his work, and they will have their day with their Lord just as black natural Muslims will have their day with their Lord. So what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is speaking of is the two natures of the people, not whether one can accept Islam and one can't. The issue is whether one's nature is so inclined or one's nature is disinclined to do so.
Okay.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad never denied that there were white Muslims.
Okay. On page, well, I guess I might be confused.
He professed Islam. Whites who profess Islam. He acknowledged that.
Okay. On page 95, it says the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was adamant, it seems, that whites simply could not be made Muslim. Says he, some Arab Muslims think that the white people can be made Muslims, but not me. Emphasis original. That, to me, that seemed a little different than what you're saying.
Right. Well, no. Historical context is critical. Honorable Elijah Muhammad was specifically speaking of Prophet Muhammad's work in Mecca. that is why, well, in Arabia, that is why I added that in that section, because we're speaking of who Muhammad's people were. Prophet Muhammad entertained the thought that he can convert the Sasanians and the Byzantines. He can convert the whites in the areas around Arabia. He had already converted the black Arabs, but he thought he could convert the whites in the area. And this is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is referring to. And Honorable Elijah Muhammad it can simply be described as reading history, because the history indicates that Muhammad failed in converting the whites of Persia and Byzantine. Now, later Persians and some Byzantines will convert to the religion, but he's speaking about Muhammad's failure. Muhammad really believed he could convert those particular whites, and Honorable Elijah Muhammad is saying no, he was wrong, and he died with a broken heart because he believed sincerely he could do so, but had failed to do so. There's something about the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad that must be a methodological principle, and most people, Muslims and non-Muslims, are guilty of violating this methodological principle. That is putting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's singular statement in context of other relevant statements he made. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad can only be understood in the context of the breadth of what he taught over the years. Any isolated, any statement taken out of its context would sound one way. When put back in this context, will have a totally different significance. So it's critical. Muslims are guilty and non-Muslims are guilty of violating this methodological principle of seeking to understand any individual statement, any individual claim of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the context of other relevant statements that he has made on the matter.
Context of white supremacy. If it's acceptable to you, I'm going to check the phone line. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. Person in 8699. Did you have a question for Dr. Muhammad?
Yes, sir. Peace. My name is Brother Gary. Question for, and I'm out of Maryland, D.C. area. Dr. Wesley, good to hear you on the show again. My question is with regard to when you go out and get your information, since there's so much material, so many books written about the same subjects, how do you arrive, how do you address when somebody says you're just going out to find the information that supports your belief or that supports the conclusion that you want? How do you avoid that kind of scenario, if I'm making sense?
Yes, you are. A person who would say that about me is a person who hasn't read my books. Because I frequently provide the counter-argument and deconstruct it. That's how scholarship is done, not by suppressing the counter-argument, but by presenting it and deconstructing it. A person who would say that is also a person who just simply does not know my library. My library has the supportive and the contrastive works on subjects of areas of study of mine. To be a good scholar, you have to read it all. You have to weigh both sides. And if by weighing both sides or all sides, we come to a conclusion, then ideally in your work, you will put the process by which you came to the conclusion, or you will not just put why you're right, but you'll put why the other is wrong. And that's why my book, God's Black Prophets, is not just about the blackness of the prophets, but I deconstruct the myth of the white Muhammad. I present the white Muhammad, and I give the evidence of why the white Muhammad is a fallacy. I quote those who believe Prophet Muhammad is white. I give the sources. I give all the sources of where you can find this white-skinned Muhammad in Islamic literature. Most of those who believe he was white probably didn't know where they can find so much material on the white Muhammad. I give them the material where they can find the white Muhammad. No, those who would say that are those who have not closely read my work.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, beloved.
Thank you for calling in, sir. Appreciate it. Guest from Friday's program, Mrs. Zara Ali. Zara Ali, if you have a question for our guest, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, Mrs. Ali, your line is open. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Did you have a question, Mrs. Ali?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Your line is open and you're on the air, Mrs. Ali.
I'm so sorry. I'm having a feedback. I'm just going to turn off this one. One moment, please.
Okay.
I'm so sorry about that. Yes, I do have a question. I'm a Muslim, African woman, and I'm the raised Muslim. And what do you say? For me, I'm raised to believe that Muhammad was so divine that when they even tried to take a picture of him, that's why you never see a picture of Muhammad like it's depicted of Christ. It was a light being. What do you say about that? Have you heard, read?
Okay. There is an echo on your line, beloved, so I couldn't hear.
I'll repeat it.
Question. Okay.
Oh, I'll repeat it. What do you say? Okay. What do you say is the reason why they can never come up with a picture of Muhammad? I was raised to believe Muhammad was a light being, that he was seen by humans, but when they try to portray or take a picture of him, they could not see. What do you say about that?
Well, there are thousands of successful, if you will, attempts to paint a picture of Muhammad. There are thousands of pictures of Muhammad in Iran today, for example. We have paintings, portraits of Muhammad, the white Muhammad, of course, that go back to the 13th century under the Mongols, portraying, painting the life of Muhammad was a very important part of the Mongol propagation of Islam. That's to say, painting scenes from Muhammad's life. The government the court would paint scenes from Muhammad's life and depict him. So Muhammad is depicted, but by the time Muhammad started to be depicted visually, Islam had already been Aryanized. So all of these depictions are of a white Muhammad. And even when they try to honor the prohibition against depicting the face of Muhammad, that's a prohibition that did not begin until the 16th century. But even with portraits or images of Muhammad after the 16th century, where his face is veiled, white supremacy is still notable in that depiction. because they usually show a limb like a hand. They don't show his white face, but they show his white hand. So there are images of Muhammad in the Muslim world now. Thousands in Iran, they put them on necklaces. They put him on his image on mirrors. They put his image on canvas. This whitenize Muhammad. But we also have images of Muhammad that go back to the 13th century. So there are portrayals of Muhammad in the Muslim world, but they are the Aryanized Muhammad.
All right, thank you. I never seen it. So
yeah.
you are
in my book. In my book, there is in my book, God's Black Prophets. There is such an image.
Great. I'll get your books. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
in, for answering my question.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Let's see. Person who called in, last four digits, 7158. 7158. If you have a question for Dr. Muhammad, your line is open.
Peace, Gus. How you doing? This is Brother X. And peace, Brother Muhammad. Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
How are you?
And I'm alaikum, Brother Wesley Muhammad. How you doing?
Wa alaikum salam. I'm well. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. I got your book, The God's Black Prophets, and it's an excellent read. And in your other book, and most definitely, in your other books, you talk about the concept of the black God in all religions across the world. And so in these books, you seemingly have black people classifying themselves and identifying themselves biologically by race in a racial context as black, being black before the advent of white supremacy. So my question is, how do you clearly explain this, like, to people who think the concept of biological race and racial classifications only started when white supremacy came onto the scene? What is the best way?
A couple of things. Thank you for that question. Good question. I doubt the premise of both of those statements. One, the late recognition of the concept of race, even though in some sciences, in some scientific circles, there's the effort to make the whole concept of race an artificial construct. I am not an advocate of that. I think C.O.W.S. has done good work in arguing against that, the idea of the artificiality of race. Secondly, your question implied a late emergence of white supremacy. But white supremacy we encountered white supremacy when the Indo-Aryans went into the Indus Valley in the 17th, 16th century BC and slaved the skins of those black Indians that they found there. White supremacy, and they boasted in their religious literature that by slaying the skin of the black indigenous people of India, they were slaying the skin of the black gods. So the concept of white and black was there then. These concepts are not newcomers to the scene, because white supremacy is not a newcomer to the scene. So yes, beloved, the concept was around for a long time. Did that answer your question, beloved?
I guess so. Yes, sir. So you're saying that black people already had a concept of being black as a, as a race and theologically and as a definition too, before white supremacy?
Oh, yes, sir. I mean, excuse me. The ancient Egyptians identified not only themselves but their gods as not just in depictions where they painted black, but in literary descriptions they would use the term black to describe men and the Saw or Cyrus. So absolutely, it is a myth that American racism introduced the concepts of race, or Western racism introduced the concepts of white. Thus, it had to introduce the concept of black. That is a myth. The concepts of black and white long pre-existed the development of the Western world. We find it among ancient Egyptians. We find it among the ancient Sumerians. The Inky was called a black bull. Absolutely identifying not just themselves but their gods as black. We find in the literature of ancient peoples. Does that help, beloved?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
I'm like,
wow, look at you.
Mr. Nero, did you have a question for Dr. Muhammad? Mr. Nero, are you there? Did you have a question, or are you just listening?
I'm sorry, Gus. I had the mute button pushed. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Dr. Muhammad. Pleasure to have you on the show, sir. I just have a question because I'm
glad to be on this. Brother.
Oh, wonderful. I'm not very familiar with Islam. Is the Quran written by black people?
Very good question. Very interesting question. Now, the Quran was, from a Muslim perspective, the contents of the Quran was revealed to Muhammad, that being a black prophet. The writing of the Quran, the putting the revelation to paper, if you will, not literally paper, but the writing was done by his companions, most of whom were black. An interesting story. The bringing together of the canon of the Quran, the text of the Quran, is said to have been done by Zayd ibn Thabit. Zayd was a black Arab from the Hazrat tribe. So it was a black Arab responsible for collecting the text that was later canonized by Uthman, the third caliph. So the Muslim world is indebted not just to the revelation of the Quran from the black Arab prophet Muhammad, but the collection of it en route to making it a canon, a book, was done. The Muslim world too is indebted to a black Arab, Zayd. So, in other words, you're asking about the writing of the Quran, implying like this, like I wrote God's black prophets. Meaning I'm the author of that material. No Muslim would say any of them wrote it in terms of authoring the material in it, but in terms of putting the Quranic material to text, the physical text, absolutely, that was a black Arab operation. You understand, Nathan, beloved?
Yes, sir. And just would also like to know who owns the publishing rights as well.
You also like to know what?
I mean, who owns the publishing rights? I mean, who benefits every time a Quran is bought and sold?
Oh, hold on, I have to plug my phone. Well, it depends on the edition. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, depends on the edition of the Quran, beloved.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Nero. Appreciate it. 8699. Did you have a question for Dr. Muhammad? 8699.
Nah, brother, I'm still on the line listening. I asked a question earlier about Dr. Wesley's quest for finding the material and whatnot. If I can do a follow-up, can I do a follow-up question?
If you could hang tight, because there are quite a few other folks that called in, so I want to make sure.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Question. If we have time, I'll come back. Thank you,
yes,
sir. 0164. Did you have a question? 0164. Last four digits 0164. Did you have a question? Okay. I would assume you're just listening. Last four digits 9224. 9224. Did you have a question?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Last four digits 0775. 0775. Did you have a question for Dr. Muhammad?
Yes, this is Philadelphia again. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you for calling.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I haven't had the opportunity to listen to the whole show, but what I'm getting from the comments and the questions is that the Prophet Muhammad has been whitewashed. Do I have that correct? And if that's the case,
yes,
the
ma'am,
purpose of presenting the Prophet Muhammad as a white man using the text to control the religious group and negate the real contributions of the Africans who were the original, I guess, group of prophets. And you can tell I'm not Muslim, but I'm just trying to understand because I never really thought of the Prophet Muhammad as a white person. And even though I've never really seen the Prophet Muhammad presented as we often see, Jesus presented, I just never thought about nationality. As a matter of fact, I had always just thought Arab, and most Arabs that I've seen do have light complexion.
Yes, ma'am. Today they do, but most of these these are not Arabs in the ethnic sense, at least not in the old ethnic sense. They are Arab in that their native language may be Arabic, but ultimately they trace their genealogy to non-Arab families. These are non-Arab converts to Islam and to Arab culture. And also race mixing, hold on, you know what to do. Race mixing has lightened the complexion of the Muslim world. And so you have Arab speakers that are Arab only by virtue of the fact that they speak Arabic, but they have no lineage to the true Arabs, the black-skinned Arabs, which was the group from which Prophet Muhammad was born.
People go, and then on top of that, it sounds very similar to some of the conversation that was being had about the modern-day Jewish population. were they
Yes.
were they killed off? Or was the race mixed so much that I guess generation upon generation the whole outlook was changed?
I'm sorry, beloved, I couldn't make out your last comment.
Well, if you have the current
Can you repeat that?
I said, if you have the current Arabs being presented as, I don't know, are they classified as white? I'm not sure. But my whole question is, if the original Arabs, they can trace their lineage back to Africans, and their forefathers was, in fact, black people, or people of color. I'm trying to be politically correct here. Then how is it possible that generation upon generation, that they mix their blood and now they appear to be, I guess, white? Where did all the black people go?
Where did all the black people in the Muslim world go? Where did all these black Arabs go? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, it was
is that a question?
there. And it was, is
your question that?
Would you say, sir?
Is your question where if, as I understand your question, if the original Arabs were black, where did all these black Arabs go? Is that what you're asking?
More or less. I mean, I don't see how we have a nation full of, like the Arabs as they are presented today. There would have to be some evidence of the original Arabs. Where are they? Or are they just not shown?
Oh, there's a tremendous amount of evidence, and the Arabs are still around. Again, it's one of the benefits of the work of Sister Dana Manish and Brother Tariq Berry. Sister Dana Manish does wonderful ethnological work on the Arabs, the black Arabs of today. You Google Dana Manish and pull up her blogs and her writings, you see clearly where the black Arabs are today, where they went in history, and we will have a great appreciation of where the black Arabs are today. And that's one of Brother Tariq Berry's causes, is to shine light on black Arabs, the displaced black Arabs of today. Because due to the success of the white supremacist propaganda, the assumption is that, well, even if there were black Arabs back then, they're gone. They're non-existent today. But in fact, that is not the case. Black Arabs still exist today. And the academic light is now being shined on those black Arabs, now than never before. So the black Arabs are still around, beloved. They're still in Medina. They're still in Mecca. They're still in Arabia in general. Still in North Africa. The black Arabs are still among us today.
I wanted to get, I'm not sure if this is Dante X, but 7158. 7158, did you have one last question for Dr. Muhammad? The person 8699, you said you had another question. Do you have one last question for Dr. Muhammad?
Yes, sir. It's real easy. Not a simple question. Dr. Wesley, when you started your journey, I guess you got most of your I'm trying to figure out how did you get pointed? Did you just, to the material that you have been studying all these years, did you just go to the best of the storehouse of books through the universities? How did you know where to go? Is that a part of just academic training?
Well,
because me, for instance, I could not know possibly where to start without some kind of I guess I could start at any book and just try and trace all the sources.
Yes, sir. That is the start. I did not start with the type of library that, for example, I have access to right now as an academic. I have access to libraries. But that was absolutely not the case when I began. I began with what I had, books at the local bookstore, and books at the Morehouse Atlanta University Center Library. I followed the footsteps. I learned early that the footnotes are the most important part of any writing, because the footnotes are the footsteps that leads to so much other information. So, yes, sir, it's not about the library necessarily. So, access to great resources is critical, but that's not how it began with me, not at all. The process was doing the best with what I did have, extracting as much information out of whatever source I was reading, whatever its value. I knew there's always some critical piece of information in any book I was reading.
Dr. Muhammad, I want to be courteous with your time. I believe this is the person who suggested that you come on the program. Did you have time for a last question, or if this is?
I do. I tend to nod my brother. Question. Yes, sir.
7158. Did you have a question for Dr. Muhammad? 7158.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother. All right. I guess. Yes, sir. So my last question is, I don't know if you addressed this already, but my last question is, what do you say to the thousands of black people who have read Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization, and whom they would say that description of the Arabs being black is in direct conflict and blasphemy of the description of the white Arabs detailed in Chancellor Williams' work?
Well, yes, I addressed that. Not only, but I'm very happy to address it again. I gave a whole lecture on Chancellor Williams' book. It's a powerful book. Chancellor Williams did not document any white Arabs. He just assumed white Arabs. Dr. Chancellor Williams was built on history, bad on ethnography. He didn't document any white Arabs. He just assumed white Arabs. And the point I made earlier is that if Chancellor Williams was writing with the benefit of the researches of, for example, Dana Manish and Tariq Berry, he would have had to have written a completely different book, because with their works in particular, the ethnographic component it supplies. He didn't do ethnography. He did history, and he did history well, but his ethnography was all assumption. He assumed that the Arabs that he's reading about, the historical Arabs that he was reading about, looked the same way as the Arabs that he was encountering in his day. That was an assumption. He didn't at all demonstrate that. He assumed that in his text. And if he had the benefit of Dana Manish and Tariq Berry's works, he would have been disabused of that assumption and wrote a totally different book.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, beloved. I would recommend, I did a whole lecture on Chancellor Williams' book, appraisal of Chancellor Williams' book, Destruction of Black Civilization. That is available on our website, 18publishers.com.
Oh, yes, I have that. I just wanted to raise the question for those who might be saying, hey, Dr. Wesley. Yes.
That book is good on history, bad on ethnography.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. 7158, thank you for the questions. Excellent questions. Everybody, excellent questions. Can you give us the address again where they can get that DVD, Dr. Muhammad?
Yes, sir. I'll go to www.theblackguide.com and go to the store. All of our Latin products are available there. And truthofgodinstitute.com.
Outstanding. And also your website, drwesleymuhammad.com. Again, if you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, it's linked in the description. So you just click that, take you right to his website. Again, it's drwesleymuhammad.com. Thoroughly enjoyed the program. Excellent book.
Please forgive my coughing and hacking. I'm struggling to overcome this cold. So my apologies to you and your audience.
No worries at all. I wish you a speedy recovery, and I appreciate you hanging in there and being a trooper to share great information with us for the past couple hours. I hope the program was worthy of your time and interest. I know
absolutely it was. Absolutely it was.
Glad to hear.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We appreciate it. We'd love to have you back in the future, sir. Again, our guest for today's program, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. We are thankful that you were able to spend some of your Tuesday evening with us. Thoroughly enjoyed the broadcast, and we will be in touch with you soon, sir.
Yes, sir. Greetings.
Take excellent care. Context of White Supremacy. First simulcast live at waronthehorizon.com and blogtalkradio.com. Dual broadcast. Hope the folks, first time hearing Context of White Supremacy at War on the Horizon. I hope the program was of interest. I hope you got constructive information. If not, please do not waste your time listening to the program. If you see the cows pop up at War on the Horizon, just, go do something else constructive until it ends if you don't think you got useful information from the program. Justice, as I said, she's traveling. Her email address, justice.asap@yahoo.com. Again, justice.asap@yahoo.com. I wanted to also make sure I plugged War on the Horizon, Irritated Genie. They are doing a presentation in February 20th, Washington, D.C. They'll be bringing Brothers Keeper to Washington, D.C. to do the African Insurrection musical. February 20th, Washington, D.C. You can go to waronthehorizon.com. Go to the events section, and you can get more information about it. It'll be updated as we get closer to February 2011. But the lead, Sister Nefertari with Children of Southampton, I believe she will be present as well. And Gus T Renegade is hoping to be present also. Should be outstanding. Definitely want to support that. I'm actually going to play Brothers Keeper song before we get out of here today. 7158, is this Dante X? Yes, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh,
Peace,
okay.
brother.
All right. Okay. Thank you for the book, sir. This gentleman, in addition to being an investor, he got me a book so that I could do today's program. This is one of the books that I could not get from the library. He was gracious enough to send me a book. Thank you. I hope we did justice with the program.
Absolutely, brother. Never disappoint.
I appreciate it. He very informed. I enjoyed having him on the program. Very informed. We'll have to see about getting him back. I looked at some of the other books he's authored, so perhaps we can, if he's willing to come chat with us. And you had to call them too. I forgot. He actually had to call them up because they didn't want to do the program. I think they got a bad vibe from some other programs that Blog Talk Radio that they didn't think were professional or didn't think it was a constructive use of his time. So Dante actually had to do some hard work to make this program happen. So I'm thankful we were able to get it done, and I hope it was worthy of your time and energy. Grooving. Okay. Let's see. We will be back. I'm taking a brief hiatus, but we'll be back. I like hitting holidays. We'll be back on Monday, October 11th. I believe that is what white people say is Columbus Day, I believe. We'll be back on Monday, October 11th. Joel C.O.W.S, I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Joel C.O.W.S. He is a white man, suspected racist white supremacist. He is the author of White Racism, A Psychohistory. He'll be here next Monday, that is Monday, October 11th. The program will broadcast live at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific. Joel C.O.W.S, author of White Racism, A Psychohistory. He also has a book on Zionism. Real interesting. I think folks at War on the Horizon might find that program interesting, and he sent me a very interesting email also. I wanted to discuss his book on white racism, and he emailed back and redirected and advised or suggested that I might want to talk about Zionism and what's going on in Israel. I thought that was quite interesting. I don't know if he is so-called Jewish, small hat, I don't know, but should be very interesting, but that'll be broadcasting again Monday, October 11th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Context of white supremacy, and we should be back on Tuesday right here at War on the Horizon. Not hanging out today. We've done 3 programs in the last 3 days and 4 programs in the last 5 days, so I'm going to take some time to take care of myself and relax, get Dante X, get his book mailed back to him. Thank you again for sharing and investing in the program. I hope it is of constructive value, and we definitely enjoyed hearing from Dr. Wesley Muhammad. I am going to support Brothers Keeper and play one of their songs from a brand new album, Revolutionary Reconstruction. I think it's very much related to the content of today's program. Tune in again, Context of White Supremacy. Support if you think the program is constructive. Please invest. Any of the non-white people that you think are doing great work, the folks at War on the Horizon, Sister Nefertari, Children of Southampton, invest in so that these organizations can continue and do more if you think they're doing constructive work. Yeah, I think we're going to ride on that one. I am going to, in addition, I'm also support Mr. Edward Williams at counter-racism.com. I'm going to play his commercial, and then I'll end with Brothers Keeper. Gus T Renegade and Justice, Context of White Supremacy. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
I've been struggling for so very long, waiting on you to come. And everything I was told to do, neglected my cause and waited on you. Been going, been waiting. And I've been there is nothing but my own resurrection. Been saved by you. Been saved by you. The road is a tangled wagon I'm at the end of it seems I can't live. So cry to Jesus, where the hell you been? 500 years I've been waiting on you. Cry to Jesus, we need a word from you. Calling your name again, deserve you. Cry to Jesus, where the hell you been? I'm trying so hard to be just like them. And miseducated Jesus, or walking talk just like them. Got promoted on the job, thought I had made it. But what the cracker give, the cracker also take it. Now my car is gone and now my home is too. I can't see straight all the bills I do to deserve it. Don't know what I did. Could be convinced that white boy was my friend. I'm at the end of my race. It seems I can't win. So cry to Jesus, where the hell you been? 500 years I've been waiting on you. Cry to Jesus, I need to hear a word from you. Calling on your name, Lord, again and again. Cry to Jesus, where the hell you been? Oh, how I wish I knew my African self. Oh, how I need a glad for so much wealth and all that wealth is embedded in me. That's what these white folks done stole from me. Well,